Let's talk about firearms and Illinoisans' access to those and the aftermath of just horrible tragedies that happen far too often, not just in Illinois, but across the country when it comes to gun violence. Of course, if you open up the Chicago Sun-Times this morning on their website, it's story after story of somebody shot here or there in the Chicagoland area, just tragic stories. But you also have instances of mass shootings that are happening, not just in Illinois. If you recall, a few years ago, the Aurora shooting, then you had the Highland Park shooting. Even down in St. Louis, my brother's daughter, my niece, was in a school that had to be locked down after somebody took a semi-automatic rifle in there and shot up the school, killing people. Thankfully, my niece was able to get out safely, but it's hard to not be impacted by these things when there are these types of occurrences. But what are the solutions? How do we approach this, and what's the best path forward? Somebody has a proposal at the Illinois State House to do that, and it's drawing some controversy. State Representative Bob Morgan joins us now with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Representative, thanks for taking time with us this morning, and let's get right into it. The bill, what does it do, and how do you see this playing out in the months ahead? Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Greg. And I'm sorry to hear what your niece went through. That's obviously something that's going to stay with her and your family forever.
Well, and you've got constituents in your neighborhood that were impacted directly by the Highland Park shooting. So this hits close to you as well.
That's right. I was at the parade. I was a few blocks away when the shooting began and got to the scene, unfortunately, in order to witness some of the gunshot victims. And will never forget the things I saw that day. So I appreciate that. As you noted, we filed legislation. We're calling it the Protect Illinois Communities Act, and the proposal has a lot of things in it. We start with, as you noted, some of the types of firearms that are increasingly part of these mass shootings. So it would ban the sale of semi-automatic rifles, high-capacity magazines, and rapid-fire devices. We're looking at the ways in which illegal guns, as you referenced at the start of the show, it's not just legal weapons that are being used, it's illegal weapons that are happening and part of this gun violence across Illinois. So using Illinois State Police and really harnessing their power to make sure that we're patrolling our borders for these illegal guns that are being trafficked in, mostly from Indiana and Missouri. We're also looking at increasing the FOID eligibility age. Right now, it's effectively a loophole where a parent can sign off on an 18, 19, or 20-year-old to get a FOID card. And then once they have that FOID card, they can buy unlimited firearms and ammunition. We would change that to raise that up to 21 for everyone. Lastly, we're working on a couple changes that deal with our red flag laws, our firearm restraining orders, those who might be a risk or dangerous to themselves or others, and trying to extend the duration of our firearm restraining order, not just to 6 months, because as we all know, domestic violence type situations can go on for a while, but extending those to up to a year.
Representative, when it comes to all of the different proposals you have laid out there, is this something that's going to be negotiated and give and take? I know that the Illinois State Rifle Association's already indicated that they're not willing to negotiate on this, but is there any room to negotiate in particular, maybe keeping the red flag situation, expanding that, but allowing for the sale of semi-automatic rifles? What's on the table for negotiation here?
This bill is just a proposal. So in terms of legislation, as you know, and as your listeners probably assume, this is always going to be negotiated up until the point in which we vote on it. And if we have enough votes, it becomes law. So this is a proposal. This represents the recommendations from the working group that I chair, the House Firearm Safety and Reform Working Group. But now we're appropriately hearing a lot of comments, suggestions, things that people like, things that people don't like, in order to find a majority of support in the House and the Senate. So this language is going to be presented at subject matter hearings. We're going to have several of them in the coming weeks. We're already getting a lot of feedback, as you noted, from supporters and opponents alike.
State Representative Bob Morgan with us here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk now 8:16. And let's get your response to some of the critics that have already voiced their concerns about this. As I mentioned, Illinois State Rifle Association, the group Guns Save Life. You've also got the Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois that have already sounded off on this, saying that they will file lawsuits on this. Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday said he supports your initiative. He believes it constitutional. But what's your reaction to those who say that, for instance, prohibiting somebody under the age of 21 from being able to get a FOID card would be unconstitutional?
We already require someone to be 21 or older to buy a handgun. So we already have age restrictions in terms of access to firearms. We just right now allow this carve out, this loophole for an 18-year-old to be able to buy unlimited AR-15s and other semi-automatic rifles. So the reality is we already have various age restrictions. This bill would carve out those who are serving in the military and other peace officers and those who are involved with sports shooting and hunting and things of that nature. So again, this is a proposal. I think this is an appropriate suggestion to raise the age to 21. In terms of the courts, if we listen to every fear-mongering threat from the NRA about what's constitutional, we would have legalized fully automatic assault weapons and hand grenades. So I really think that at this point, we're seeing a lot of states move in this direction, and I think that we're going to have a constitutional bill when we pass it.
Representative, about the magazines that contain more than 10 rounds, is that the essential kind of line there as to what is going to be considered either standard or a full capacity in the definitions you have?
Sure. Certainly, the number of bullets in a magazine, in terms of limits, the states have adopted some kind of a magazine limit and cap. They vary. 10 bullets was really the recommendation from our working group, but states are all over the map. Obviously, some states have no restrictions, but other states have had 10, 12, 17 for the different capacity. And in this situation with the magazines, you're really talking about a manufacturing question. As many people know, these cartridges they're not extensive pieces of machinery. They're mostly plastic pieces. And so we're talking about a manufacturing piece. Closing the front door so that these kinds of sales for these 30 clip magazines that were used in Highland Park, for instance, that we're not having these really extended clips being used in gun violence in the future.
Well, in a couple more questions, and I know that you yourself are pretty busy, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but some concerns that were raised were there could be 2 to 10 million of these magazines in possession right now. What would happen to those individuals who have those in their gun safes?
Yeah, the intention here is really, again, to think of it as closing the front door. We're trying to stop future sales of these not just the weapons, but also the magazines and the rapid-fire devices, which are increasingly being used to turn a handgun into a fully automatic weapon. So the effort in the legislation, the intent is really to stop the future sales. But, of course, I recognize, and the working group recognizes, all of these devices and these weapons, they exist in Illinois today. So it is intended to be, and it's really thinking about it in a prospective way, as opposed to trying to penalize those who have already purchased them legally in Illinois.
State Representative Bob Morgan with us on WMAY. Finally here, the go-to argument from the Illinois State Rifle Association, for instance, is that we already have laws on the books. We have the FOID card in place. That didn't necessarily stop the shooter in Aurora, for instance. Even though state police had revoked his FOID card, they didn't go after and grab that FOID card and confiscate any guns. In the Highland Park shooting, the suspect there got a FOID card despite state police getting a clear and present danger report from local police. And I'm even seeing, headlines out of the St. Louis shooting and even out of the Colorado shooting of law enforcement having known of these suspects in advance. So the question is, why punish law-abiding gun owners with a sweeping prohibition of sorts when it seems that the laws we have in place aren't necessarily being followed through in a proper manner to catch these individuals in advance?
I think there are organizations out there that want you to think that we just shouldn't have any laws with regards to guns because that's not going to create any more safety for our communities. But I think everyone really knows that's not true. We are finding support throughout the state, not just for the things that we've always talked about universal background checks. There's broad universal bipartisan support for that. But things like banning assault weapons, we are finding support all across the state in the central Illinois and southern Illinois region. This is something the state of Illinois, majority of the state of Illinois wants to see. And we're going to follow through on that to make sure that we're improving the safety of the state of Illinois. This is, again, a working group recommendation. So I think we're going to have a robust conversation in the coming weeks to get some good feedback on it. But I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can to pass these laws to make sure no other community goes through what we did here in Highland Park.
State Representative Bob Morgan, greatly appreciate you taking the time with us today. Let's talk again on this issue and plenty of others as well, because you guys are going to come back after January 4th, and then you've got a new General Assembly that starts January 11th with a kind of a clean slate, so to speak, of legislation. So the the trajectory of this, are you going to attempt in lame duck session to bring this up, or is it really just as a conversation starter, waiting until the new General
My
Assembly?
plan is to pass this legislation by January 10th or sooner. This is the 102nd General Assembly, which ends on January 10th. And everything that I've done and everything I will be doing will be focused on trying to pass the bill by then.
Greatly appreciate it. We will definitely connect with you again in the future. All right. Be safe out there.
Thanks. You too. Thanks, Greg.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's